to that in a moment. Well, actually, I'll say a quick comment now. Good morning, Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards. I actually understand where the president's coming. I don't think anyone who cares and loves this country wants to see anyone tarnish, damage, or even mishandle an American flag, let alone burn it. But freedom of speech is a big right. And I'll never forget years ago in front of the State House when we were doing a ceremony and I was emceeing the event. Actually, it was Governor John Lynch at the time, and I was up at the podium in the steps of the State House, and there was some Marines with the color guard next to me in dress blues, and there was a protest out in front, and they were protesting these from some Baptist church in Massachusetts were protesting and burning the flag after some troops had given their lives and sacrificed their lives. And I turned to the Marine in his stare ahead in a quiet moment. I said, "That must drive you nuts seeing that." And he goes, "It does, sir. Sure, it does you too. But I serve for that freedom and that right of freedom of speech." And I'll never forget that. All right. So symbolic gesture by the president won't go anywhere legally, but we'll see where everything else goes. Let's start the basics. Good morning, New Hampshire. Good morning, New England. Good morning, worldwide. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google, play the pulse of an H. Nice looking Tuesday. It may be the pick of the week for the weather. We got a lot to talk about, everything from a mess, financially speaking, in Claremont and New Hampshire, the Claremont school situation, president sending more National Guard troops, federal crackdown on crime to major cities like Chicago. We'll come back to that. New Hampshire, we have some updates on that murder-suicide in Berlin, New Hampshire. And the Democrats nationally are meeting in Minneapolis, Minnesota to set their early calendar for the primary. And I believe Paul Steinhauser with Fox News, he also reports for us here. Good morning, New Hampshire. The Pulse of an H is there. And I think it's going to tell you a lot about the powers to be today, Paul, and the Democrat Party, if they're going to blow off and screw over New Hampshire again or not. Well, Paul, last time Ray Buckley didn't have the juice to make a difference. When Biden ran again, the Democrats nationally took us off the calendar. They didn't even recognize the primary here. There was a write-in effort. Do you think he has the influence now, sitting on this committee, to make New Hampshire, uh, you know, go first? Thank you very much, Paul Steinhauser, live in Minneapolis. Good morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of an H. We'll tell you what our daily poll question up on X is in a moment. But right now, I believe yesterday, Governor Kelly Ayotte is calling for the magistrate involved in that Berlin, New Hampshire murder-suicide case that allowed bail for the estranged husband who ended up killing his wife in that restaurant and taking his own life, to move on or to be fired or let go, whatever the governor said. But John Stephen and Joe Kenny, two of our executive counselors, have been on this from the beginning. Of course, Joe Kenny representing the North Country. There's been that internal review by the court and looking at if there were gaps in the criminal justice and bail system that led to this terrible situation in Berlin, New Hampshire. Counselors Stephen and Kenny with an update live. Good morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of an Inch. Good morning, counselors. Well, Thank you, Counselor Kenny. Do we have John Stephen there? John, Counselor Stephen, thank you, Counselor Kenny. But I feel like I'm a governor at the council meeting with two counselors here. Um, Counselor Stephen, you said in a statement yesterday you're renewing calls for the immediate termination of the magistrate involved, Stephanie Johnson. And I just can ask you and your colleague, Joe Kenny, do we know the status of this magistrate? And is this magistrate, quote unquote, still on the job? Oh, that's an update. So is that the first you heard this morning that this magistrate is no longer on the job? Mhm. Councilor Kenny and Councilor Stephen, thank you for this live update. Any more pending um, things that you want to see done here pending this review going forward? Hmm. I appreciate it. Yeah, go ahead, John. Go ahead, Counselor. Hmm. Cool. All right. I'd like to thank you both for your time, Counselors Joe Kenny and John Stephen, updating us. Thank you both. All right, you're hearing this first here this morning. John Stephen had called for the immediate termination of the magistrate involved in this case of Berlin, New Hampshire, Stephanie Johnson. We're hearing this morning that as of this morning, first he's heard of this, that magistrate, he's been informed by the court, the Supreme Court, or the court system is no longer employed and no longer on the job. It's been let go. So that magistrate's no longer employed and on any job, I guess, with the courts. That's according to John Stephen this morning. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the pulse of an H. So President Donald Trump has mayors and governors in so-called blue cities and states reacting rather passionately defending their crime rates, saying he's not welcome to send the National Guard to their cities like Chicago. They don't need it. Don't come here. But he's got them reacting. And there's a lot of crime in those cities, a lot of murders, a lot of shootings, a lot of gang members, a lot of bad criminal behavior. So who's winning this war of public opinion? And is it a precursor to the midterm elections? Hey, Google. Hey, God. Hey, Google. Hey, Alexa, play the pulse of an HJ Dog. We've got that. We'll tell you the poll question up on X in a moment. Back in a moment. All right, welcome back. Yeah, again, some news made this morning. Executive Counsel John Stephen telling the show moments ago, Good Morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of an Ancient Magistrate Stephanie Johnson, who was the magistrate who on a weekend made a decision regarding a low bail for a violent estranged husband who had stalking, assault, kidnapping, all kinds of charges against his estranged wife, and ended up taking her life, killing her, and taking his own life in a Berlin, New Hampshire restaurant. John Stephen and others had called for her release or taking her off the job. And as of this morning, we hear the magistrate is no longer working for the court system, according to John Stephen. All right, welcome back. Dean Spiliotis, Southern Hampshire University, political science professor, going a little bit earlier this morning because we got we do have a full 10 o'clock hour in studio. Good morning, Dean. How are you? Good. Enjoying I can't believe I'm saying this, what's left of summer? Don't cut the lawn. Don't cut the lawn. Enjoy it. Dean, just going national for a moment. I want to talk for a moment. Let's go with a couple national. Paul Steinhauser joined us live from Minneapolis, Minnesota this morning. The DNC's meeting this morning on the calendar, the early calendars. We know the last time around under the Biden White House, a lot of BS, but the point is, they didn't even tell Jeanne Shaheen and Democrats the truth here. They took away the New Hampshire primary last time, and we found out later in that book that was written that Biden's team didn't want him to be seen or having to run in the early contest knowing his cognitive decline. But the point is, Ray Buckley, the chair of the Democrats, is on this committee meeting in Minneapolis. Do you think Democrats nationally will set New Hampshire's primary calendar first as the first primary or not? Now let's switch gears. I'm going to just kind of pose an observation. I don't know. I guess you could sort of say it's a question for you to tee up, Dean Spiliotis with Southern Hampshire University. So you and I know that, and I'm amazed at this because I don't think it's going to stop until maybe a couple more years. And I think sometimes I don't know how else to say this. It does cause a little chuckle in me because I can see what the president Donald Trump does, but he throws out these things, whether it's rename the Washington Commanders football team, or sign an executive order here or there. Now, ordering the Justice Department, if he calls them professional agitators, burn an American flag, they can be arrested. And he does these things, and he has everyone reacts, including major Democrats. They can't help not to take the bait. He draws them out. They react. The national media reacts, and he is the president, so I get it. But this, even sending federal troops, I'm watching this DC crackdown. One of the city officials in one of the cities where they're talking about sending National Guard troops, saying there's only been a few arrests in Washington. President Trump comes out and said there actually has been about more than 1,000 arrests in DC. Now Chicago, Baltimore, and you're seeing these mayors and governors in these states. And of course, the Chicago governor may want to run for president, blasting back at Donald Trump, taking him on, blasting. So he pulls him right in, and now he's got a wrestling match verbally with these leaders who are defending their crime rates. And at the end of the day, you and I know Chicago has a major crime issue. Just look at every weekend. Baltimore's had a crime problem for 20, 30 years. A lot of our major cities do, and DC has. Whether or not you can say the crime rates are going down or not, you know that a few hundred murders a year in these places is not uncommon. So I'm watching the president sort of play this cat and mouse game. I'm not saying it's a game, but you know what I'm saying. And I don't know where it goes, but I think it's setting a tone for the midterms. Take it away. Sure. I, I just have to laugh though, because you get into these scrums with Donald Trump, like you saw with primary candidates, presidential opponents. He calls Governor Newsom new scum. And then he calls Pritzker of Illinois, says he probably should spend a little more time in the gym, talking about him being overweight. I mean, classic Trump. And I'm just watching everyone he tangles with, he shoots a nickname at him, President Trump. He'll have a nickname for these people pretty soon. And I'm just watching this. And you know what? He may well be, and that very few people have been able to tangle verbally with the president, but he might have that might be the way to play back at Trump. I mean, I remember Chris Christie on my show saying in the primary, Dean, you remember when he ran, I'm the only one and go toe to toe for Donald Trump. I'm the only one. And look what he did. He shredded Christie. It just is interesting if one person can actually go toe to toe and hold their own with him. Oh, I just kind of just, I just the way it is. Hey, Dean, real quick, when are we gonna see a major Democrat run for governor? Well, it's interesting. I had Andy Smith on yesterday, sort of defending his recent poll from Friday because I was bashing it on the approval rating being divided on Kelly Ayotte. Yeah, and of course, I called it a joke, but he came on yesterday, get to his credit, and we had a good segment. But when I asked him at the end, okay, do you see a blue wave in the midterms in New Hampshire? And your poll on Friday, even though it's a panel, not a poll, you think Kelly Ayotte is under that 50% in approval? Do you think she's gonna have a hard time getting reelected? He said, I do. Yeah. I basically said she'd be lucky if she got 51, 52%. He goes, a win's a win. Yep. All right. All right, team. Enjoy your final day of freedom this summer. All right. Thank you. We get back. John Decker, our own White House correspondent, on deck next. All right, John Decker, our own White House correspondent, live. The president's going to be meeting with his cabinet if he's not already today. A lot going on, including sending more National Guard troops to major cities to fight crime like Chicago. Good morning, John. I think you'd agree with me, John. I just said with one of our political analysts, the president throws these things out there, and boy, does he get governors and mayors in these places like Chicago or Baltimore reacting to him, doesn't he? And John, you were all over. We were all paying attention in a 10-day period. The war in Ukraine, things are quieted down. And not the war, but between the diplomatic efforts to end the war. And John, final question, White House correspondent. I've seen some ancillary stories, and I don't know, and it's really hard to ascertain today what's really 100% legit versus spin. But Caroline Levitt, White House press secretary from New Hampshire, look forward to having her and her boss on the show soon. Um, Commented a number of weeks ago when this came up. It was visible the president had some bruising on his wrist, and there was some issues. I think it was a blood circulation type common issue. The doctors ruled that he wasn't in the risk category or the concern. But then right in the last week or so, there's been more raised about that. Is that just gamesmanship out there, or have you heard anything about this in and around the president, the White House? Thank you, John Decker, White House course. Are you going to go? Are you going to the U.S. Open in tennis? Are we going to see? Do you think we're going to see a Spanish Italian men's final again or not? Hey, yeah, I know. Yeah. And how many times have you watched the McEnroe documentary on Netflix? It's called McEnroe. Isn't it great? What a character. All right. Well, John Decker, our White House correspondent. Thank you, John. By the way, in some other news, Governor Kelly Ayotte saying New Hampshire has not been asked to send any National Guard troops to Washington. So that question came up. The other story we broke this morning, we had Executive Counselor John Stephen and Joe Kenny, Counselor Kenny on the show. And I just want to repeat this accurately because it's some breaking news. And many of you will recall, it's hard not to recall, just a terrible story that struck and hit Berlin, New Hampshire, not, number of weeks ago or weekends ago with the murder of a woman who was very popular in town, Berlin, New Hampshire, the restaurant where she was. And she was murdered by her estranged husband, and then he took his own life. It was the classic case. His last name was Gleason. Classic case of the terrible kind of domestic violence, stalking victim stuff. I mean, this guy had been charged with sexual assault of ex-wife, kidnapping, harassment, assault, all these things. And this case rose to light not just because Berlin's a smaller community and it was just a terrible. She was so popular in town, people loved her. We had the mayor on from Berlin, New Hampshire at the time. She was a vivacious, unifying figure in town, and she got involved in this quote unquote bad marriage and couldn't get out of it. And this guy just kept abusing and stalking and all these things. So these things happened far too often. But there was a magistrate, and this whole story kind of blew up, that worked through the Supreme Court and the court system. A magistrate is technically not a judge, but there are people that hired and work there. They work full time for the state to be magistrates, especially on weekends when there's not as many people around. Courts may not be in session. Typically, someone arrested on a weekend might be arraigned in a local court, a district court on a Monday. So these cases when there's an arrest and the decision has to be made, should we hold the person, detain the person, or let them go without bail, with bail? So in this case, this guy had numerous violent charges against him, and the local police, I think Berlin police, I don't have all this in front of me, but I remember this, had argued more than once with the magistrate, don't let this individual out free. He will hurt or do worse to this woman. And he was let out on bail. I think it was $5,000. So really a sad story, but John Stephen jumped on it, executive counsel wanting change because he cited a similar case that the same magistrate was involved in Manchester, New Hampshire on a stabbing. So he had been calling for, John Stephen had been calling for um, the the release of the magistrate. So he had asked that the magistrate be let go, if you will. And this morning we heard on the show, that the magistrate in question just this morning, John Stephen, when I asked him her status, Magistrate Stephanie Johnson, he had been calling on for her to be terminated from her employment, no longer allowed to do this. He just this morning on the show, Good Morning New Hampshire, the Pulse of an H, Councilor Stephen saying just this morning he heard from the court that the magistrate in question, Stephanie Johnson, has been terminated or let go, no longer working for the court. So that's just this morning. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, by the Pulse of an H. With inflation and the dollar getting less for your buck and all the stuff that's happening, we're going to hear from Adam at Alpine Gold, one of our great partners and sponsors, alpinegold.com. They're also doing a lot in the community. Alpinegold.com. You want to buy some silver? I'm hearing this is a good time right now in particular. He'll talk about that in a moment. Use just the words together as one word, the pulse, just the pulse, one word, put it together, the pulse at checkout. You get free shipping. And if you buy or join, get the silver sent to your house or gold backs. If you remember the pulse as well, and you're going to get some great service. So Adam on deck. Top of the 10 o'clock, Phil Tobbs, Swim of the Mission, talking about a new challenge involving bourbon and Navy SEALs. That sounds pretty fun. A little bit later on, we'll tell you about the ongoing partnerships with New Hampshire Liquor Enforcement and great hospitality restaurants. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. We're back in a few. All right, welcome back. And we bring in a good friend of the show, great sponsor and partner out there, Adam Van. Sounds like a famous musician from the 80s, Adam Van. But Adam Van with Alpine Gold, alpinegold.com, joining us live this morning, talking about some silver. Keep an eye on the price of silver. Good morning, Adam. What has it been the last 4 days? All right. Yeah, and and there are reasons for this, right? Supply, demand, high tech, silver's used in a lot of manufacturing, unlike gold. Can you elaborate on that? Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because what's gold roughly today? I mean, you probably know, give or take. Yeah. You, you and Adam Van with Alpine Gold. By the way, alpinegold.com. Go while Adam's on. Go check out the website. They do a great job. Buy, join. Very simple. 2 boxes. You want to buy something? Could be $100 in silver. You want to buy a gold back, just click buy, but use the pulse. The pulse at checkout. Shipping is free. The pulse, but is one word, the pulse. Put it together, the pulse. Shipping is free. So gold is really outpaced. And I have someone who is just a friend of mine, and he's a very, very cerebral type, sort of contrarian historian, but always looking at trends and can tell me, and maybe you can explain this. Gold's always outpaced silver, but there's a value ratio between silver and gold. And the feeling is silver has been underperforming for years. Gold is obviously much more expensive, more precious. Are we going to see the day when, if gold's at 3,400 today, and it may go up or down, but it's not cheap, for an ounce, for gold, that's a lot of money. Very valuable. It doesn't go backwards. There's a reason. There's only so much gold, been around thousands of years. But are we ever going to see silver, 70, 90, $100 an ounce or not? Hmm. Interesting. All right. Now you want to go onto your site. You want to use the pulse together as one word. Easy to do, right, Adam? Yep. Oh, good. Good stuff. Go into their office, 1800 Elm Street, Manchester, 1800 Elm Street, Manchester, alpinegold.com. Coming up next, great segment. Don't miss it.